And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds for their YouTube content, their Patreon stuff, and the like. And Adam Caplan's here as the Eagles get ready for the Giants. An interesting game. Giants really good defensive team. Offensively, they struggle. They should get some weapons back. The Eagles have their own issues, Adam Caplan, and we'll get into that. The injury updates, how it might affect this game moving forward. What's going on, buddy?
Good to talk to you. Yeah, look, we should mention, Mike, that the Eagles game next week, I did not see this happening, certainly before the season started, but the Bears-Commanders now will be the 4:25 window, and the Eagles will move to 1 p.m. Eastern. Didn't see it. Look, here's the thing, though. No matter what happens this week, the Bengals will have a losing record when the Eagles play them. The Eagles could be 500 when they play them. So you kind of understand that. But the Commanders, Bears, yeah.
Well, you got the two top picks in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. It's big. 1 and 2, no question about it. That's a big reason why. But it would not have happened unless those teams were good. And both teams are guaranteed to be over 500 when they play. So, yeah, this season is crazy, Mike. We had the two big trades today at receiver. From what I understand around the league, there's probably going to be a couple more when we get to the trade deadline at November 5th. So, yeah, lots happening around the NFL.
All right, the Eagles had a couple injuries. Let's kind of dive into how they might affect this team against the Giants. Because this Giant team, to me, they play really good defense. They got some pass rush here. You're missing – let's start with Dallas Goedert potentially in this game. Goddard left the first series. He did not return. Yep. How does that position shake out? Because that's one of those positions where you're like, without Goddard, what do you got?
Yeah, Graham Calcaterra, it was one of his best games as an Eagle. I know he doesn't block very well. It's a problem. There's no question. It just so happened, it's not that they knew that Goddard would get hurt, but C.J. Uzomah was re-signed to the practice squad, who didn't even make it to like the final day of releases, Mike, when they cut down to 53. He was cut before that. It's actually cut before the final preseason game. That is bizarre. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that they brought him back because he did not have a training camp. Andrew DeCecco and I were talking about that when we did our cut down to 53. So, right now, there's a very good chance he'll be up for the game, which means he'll be on the 53-man roster. He has 3 elevations. Goddard, he left after 3 plays, did not return. That's never a good sign. I'd be very surprised if he played this week, but we don't know yet what his status is going to be. Mailata's got a hamstring strain that he played 49 snaps, left in the fourth quarter. Fred Johnson, boy, he's been a good story, Mike. Now, here's the thing about when you know this from watching sports most of your life. When a bench player when a bench player comes in off the bench, sometimes they can play very well, but when they're asked to start an entire game, completely different. That does concern me, but I believe it's going to be Fred Johnson. And this is what they've developed, Mike, who's sort of a veteran who could play right or left tackle. He'll play left tackle in this way. And around the team with Darius Slay, the way we guys consider him questionable to play this week at the Giants. We'll know more later this week. Isaiah Rodgers replaced him. Keely Ringo, for all the people who are like Ringo stands, so to speak, he only saw 6 snaps. Rodgers is a better football player. He's faster. He's just not as long as Ringo, but he's a much better athlete as Rodgers. He's a smaller guy, though, Mike, but the Giant receivers are not big. But let me tell you, we'll talk more about this Friday, Mike. All of them can run. Jalen Hyatt, maybe their fastest receiver, was their number 3 last week with Neighbors out. Neighbors has not gotten cleared yet. He's getting closer. Again, we'll know more on Friday, but these guys could run. I get it. They only scored 7 points, but they also had one play called back to Darius Slayton.
He did get asked about moving Becton as a longer term if Mailata was out. Do you think that's a possibility and put Steen at guard, or is it Fred Johnson?
I would think it'd be Fred Johnson because that's the way they worked in training camp. We know that Jeff Stalin does not like to. He has done it before, but he doesn't like to make two moves. He likes to make one. Not out of the question. That'll be Becton, but the one thing, Greg Cosell is going to be with us tonight for our Patreon members, patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. If you want to join, our members run it tonight with Greg. We get him for 30 minutes, and they run it. They ask the questions and he answers, and they go back and forth. Greg did say that Tyler Steen tape, when he came in against New Orleans, was phenomenal. Mike, phenomenal. We should let you know that. He's number 56. I know he was coming in off the bench, but that's good. We finally heard some good stuff about Tyler Steen.
Yes, he played for a little bit in a game earlier this year. Darius Slay, as you mentioned, Isaiah Rodgers got those snaps there, and we'll see what happens in that secondary. So a couple injuries there with three key guys, Goddard, Mailata, Slay, that you touched on, Adam Caplan. This NFC East, obviously, it's not what we thought. You know, everybody, Eagles, Cowboys, and right now you might feel worse about those two teams than the other two teams. You might feel better about the Giants than you do the Cowboys at this moment. I know Dallas did beat New York, but the Commanders, they're sitting atop. Is it time to take them for real?
You have to because of the quarterback. This is a guy, Jaden Daniels, I was very high on for the draft. Really good processor that's played out. They're not a lot of talent. I thought they got handled pretty well last week. They made it close, though. They came close to actually putting the game into overtime, but their defense doesn't have a lot of playmakers, not very good on the back end. They didn't tackle well either last week. Now, if you look at their next four games, right, we're talking about the Commanders here, they host Carolina, who should easily beat. Then they play that game next week. They'll host the Bears. That's a 4:00 window game, 4:25. Then at the Giants, who you said are competitive, I agree. Then they host the Steelers. I keep telling people, the Commanders, let's see what happens when the schedule gets better. They're obviously going to go to 5-2 this week, barring anything unforeseen. But let's cool our jets a little bit. Let's get through the schedule first before we start crowning them champion.
All right, let's go to Dallas. I mean, they obviously got their doors blown off this weekend. It looked like the Lions had fun in doing it. Jerry Jones, just in a radio interview today, sounded like he lost it. This just isn't a very good football team.
Mike, that interview, and I retweeted it from the Dallas writers and reporters, people are going out of their mind. They're getting after Jerry Jones. There's no question about it. When you look at Dallas, this is an unbelievably damning stat, which I put this on Twitter on Sunday night, and people went out of their minds. Mike, over their last four games at home, right, which they're 0-4, they've given up 167 points, Mike, over 41 points per game, nearly 42. That, and I've been to that stadium, which I think is too big. That's embarrassingly bad, Mike. That's just about as bad as it gets. So you got to see what happens here, Mike. It's beyond me, to be honest with you.
Well, what's more chaotic? What's going on in Dallas, or what's happening right now with Sirianni and in Philly? Yeah,
let me just address it. We're more about information and football information rather than talk radio stuff. But look, Nick's got to understand you can't be the story. I could tell you inside Novacare, nobody cares in terms of it's all about football. It's all talk radio stuff. But the problem is you're going to keep their play. It's just a needless distraction. When I talk about that, it means players are going to be asked about it. Yes, I know they back Nick. He's going to be asked about it repeatedly. I get it's after the game. It's just, I don't care what the fan said. Just ignore it. Walk off the field.
Yeah.
And if he said something during the game, that's even worse. I saw that there's the Reddit thing. I don't know what to believe, but my point is, stick to football, man. That's his job. And remember the thing in Kansas City when he was walking when he was a couple years ago, when the Eagles beat them. And he said what he said. You can't do that. That's conduct unbecoming a head coach. And I don't pay attention to what's on ESPN and the talk shows. It means absolutely nothing. I pay attention to what people in the league think. Coaches I really respect saw the Kansas City thing and called him a clown. A couple guys that I'm pretty close to thought that was ridiculous. Like, what head coach does that? Like, you can't do that stuff, man. It's now tomorrow, Mike. When they get to practice, nobody will care. It's a total non-story. But when you're not playing football for the first 40 hours, when you don't practice till Wednesday, people care. But you just don't be the story, man. That's my point. Again, you know me pretty well. I've been on your show for probably going on a decade. I usually don't give a crap about that stuff. I usually ignore it when I'm asked about it. But when I think it could, potentially because of Jeffrey Lurie, I know how Jeffrey thinks, and he wants people to be treated with respect, and he wants his head coach to be on point. This is not something Jeffrey would be happy with. I'm sure that's the case.
All right, well done, Adam Caplan. Let's look at the Giants, who the Eagles will play this week. Just give us a synopsis on where this team is. I mean, defensively, they're pretty good. Offensively, not great. How much is that injury-related or just not great?
Yeah, let's take a look at their defense very quickly here. Understand it. Now, that game at Seattle was ridiculously wild. I didn't see that. I picked Seattle in that game. I'm not going to lie to you. They faced the Browns. They got after Watson. Everyone does. They got after Jaden Daniels a little bit. They were competitive. They hung in there against Cincinnati. Some bad penalties. The Slayton 50-yarder got called back. They've got a lot of speed defensively. Azeez Ojulari, who's filling for Thibodeau. Thibodeau's on IR with a wrist injury. He had 2 sacks last week. You're right. Now, the scheme is different from Wink Martindale's. They don't blitz, really. They're a low blitz number, generally, which under Shane Waldron. They'll rush 4 or 5 and play coverage. And the secondary is not very talented. In fact, they're not very good at corner. I'm a little surprised that Burrow did not have a better game. I'm stunned, to be honest with you, that he didn't do better. But, yeah, they're more competitive. And they had a nice draft. They're definitely more competitive. Daniel Jones is also playing a lot better.
And then you have, obviously, what's happening here with Philadelphia. Their next 4 games are going to be key. They have the Giants. They have Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Dallas. 4 teams on paper that look like they're struggling. Cincinnati's dangerous. Yeah. The Giants play good defense. Jacksonville's going to be basically, a team that's out of it by that point. So these next 4 games, very telling. Yeah,
and we'll go over Dallas in a second after we do the Eagles here. Yeah, so 2 road games. It's funny. Up till last year, the Eagles were the best road team in the NFL under Sirianni. They were phenomenal. It's really odd that a young head coach would have his team playing that well on the road. Last year, obviously, they collapsed everywhere. It wasn't just on the road. It was at home. Yeah, and then they'll host Doug Peterson if he's still the head coach, and then they'll play at Dallas, where I know the Eagles have been terrible at Dallas lately, but they got to feel good that Dallas is awful at home. They're not even competitive. It's hard to believe. And then Dallas, by the way, their schedule, they're at the Niners. I can't see that happening. Can't see them winning. Then they have a bye. Then they're at Atlanta, who's improved. Then they host the Eagles. Then they host the Texans. Mike, they're in trouble. Their 2 best pass rushers are out. In fact, their top 3 pass rushers are out. They got problems, Mike. And I cannot believe how bad Dak Prescott and the offense was last week. What an absolute embarrassment.
Well, I tell you, and real quick on them, I mean, you have no fear in their run game, and they just don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. I mean, it makes it pretty difficult.
Yeah, and what is Jerry Jones? Look, people around the league love Jerry Jones because he's the manager and owner, so he makes all personnel decisions with help. And to think that Rico Dowdle is an NFL starting running back, what planet is he on? Ezekiel Elliott is so bad, Mike. Look, last year he did a nice job. The yards per carry, not good, but some of that's attributed to short yards. He could also pass protect a little bit. But Mike, he's near the end of his career. And how Dalvin Cook is on their practice squad. He can't. Is he that bad? They can't put him on the active roster? Jeez.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't play with the Jets last year. Then he went to was he with Baltimore in the playoffs?
Yep. I mean, look, how the unmighty have fallen, right? At one point, he was an absolute star. Too many injuries, and look, he turns 30 in August. He's near the end of his career. His brother James is really good for the Bills, but
happens fast, man.
It's a train wreck, man. You're exactly right. That running back position, man, it goes like that.
Real quick, thoughts on Adams to the Jets and Cooper to the Bills?
Yeah, let's go to the Bills first. They've been looking for receiver help, and I'm telling you, they're probably going to be, Mike. There might be 2 or 3 receiver trades by the trade deadline of November 5th. Washington potentially looking for receivers. The Chiefs, I know, are. A couple other teams are looking at it. Look, Buffalo had to do something receiver. They're getting nothing out of Curtis Samuel. They're paying him too much money. The rookie Keon Coleman's not doing much. They got to get more. They got to get Josh Allen help. And the Jets, the Jets been on this Devontae Adams trade for a year. They finally get him. Garrett Wilson on the other side. Now they're Allen has always been been a good story, but he doesn't command the ball. And look, their defense is good, but not great. It's not playing at the level it was last year. Lost Jermaine Johnson, their best pass rusher for the season, due to a torn Achilles a couple weeks ago, so that's a problem. But they're going for it, and Joe Douglas is trying to save his job, so I get it. And the Raiders are in a rebuild, and that's why they moved him. They've been trying to move him. I thought all the reporting last week was comical. Everyone I talked to around the league told me that they just haven't gotten what they want. When they do, they're going to trade him.
Absolutely, yeah. And by the way, last night, hey, we need a second-round pick. They didn't want to do it. Then finally, it was like, you know what? Now, after watching that game, we'll do it. And the Jets get the deal done. Couple trades today, Eagles and Giants. We'll preview it more on Friday with Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Adam.
Thank you.
There's Adam Caplan, of course, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds.